Friends on the dais, Gopal Menon, who is a very old friend and comrade in this battle for a more just India. I would first like to begin by congratulating Gopal, though the congratulations is a very difficult term to use when you're talking about a subject like this. But it requires courage in these dark times to tell the stories of such atrocities that need to be told. And the first question that comes to mind is, what Gopal has done through this film and attempted to do through the script direction and the making of this film is something that the media should have been doing. Our media should have been telling these stories, our media should have been documenting these injustices, and it's very, very unfortunate that in such a situation, a film like this has to be made. But I also congratulate Gopal that a film like this is being made not just to show in halls and audiences and film festivals, but is going to be taken to the people beginning with tomorrow, and I congratulate you on this. What happens when a state becomes so oppressive that the voiceless become its victims? That is the story of what the UAPA Act is being used for, and one must recall that we first had the history of TADA in this country for 10 years, the terrorist and dispute the TADA Act for 10 whole years from the mid 80s to the 90s was only repealed after a lot of protests, after a lot of oppressive use of that law. Then we had POTA 10 years later, was brought in for another 10 years, and then after POTA was repealed, while POTA was repealed, many of the most oppressive provisions of POTA have now been put in to the regular permanent law, which is the UAPA. So regardless of which political dispensation we are talking about, unfortunately, the issue of unfairly balanced detention powers to the state and its police has now become institutionalized through UAPA. So whether it is the question of any of the oppressive provisions which we used to earlier call emergency legislation, we used to call it extraordinary legislation, has now become the norm in the name of fighting terror. And who were the victims during the TADA period? Apart from young Sikh youth, at that time because the Khalistan movement was at its height, you had many protesters against the new economic policy and the GATT policy in Andhra Pradesh. Who were the victims under POTA? Large numbers of our minority young men were under POTA, as also in Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh were those who were protesting against MOUs and multinationals. So whenever a protest against, and today it is minority youth and so-called Maoists. So any protest, anybody dissenting against the state can be unlawfully picked up. And worst of all, as Gopal tells me, even people who might have been 2-year-old at the time of an offense might have taken place can be picked up 10 or 15 years later on the grounds that they might have been involved in something post facto. So I think the watchdog role that the media should be playing is absent, and we must remember that we are living in extremely difficult times where the state is becoming more oppressive. We have personally experienced this ourselves, having got 120 persons convicted to life imprisonment in Gujarat. We are now paying the price for that victory. 6th petty case has been filed against us. Earlier I had 5 criminal cases against me. 4 times I had to seek anticipatory bail. At that time I got it at the lower court level. But this time with the change in regime at the center, one has had to go right up to the Supreme Court to get anticipatory bail on extremely petty charges. So the extent to which the state can go, if you somehow manage to get some powerful perpetrators punished, like we got Kodnani punished, Bajrangi punished, and now their appeals are coming up in the High Court. And the idea is to suddenly get all those 120 convictions to life imprisonment reversed. So every section of the human rights movement is facing this state oppression, and I think the biggest challenge before us is that we stand together in this battle. We cannot remain silent, and I'd like to take this opportunity to hope that this film will go far, that it will shake people's conscience, and it will make some difference to the powers that be. Thank you very, very much for having me here.